Hi everyone, welcome to ANO Camera, pronounced Ano. On this channel, I test vintage lenses on my Sony A7 III. Many old lenses cannot normally be mounted on modern cameras, so I create custom 3D printed adapters to use them. My goal is to explore the character and performance of these lenses under controlled conditions. I hope these videos help you discover your next favorite lens. Alright, are you ready? Today, I'm going to introduce the lens we'll be testing. The lens I'm introducing today comes from the Canon Canonet 28. I found this camera at a junk shop for only 500 yen. The lens had dirt and fungus inside, and the shutter wasn't working anymore. But since I planned to remove the lens and use it on a Sony camera, that wasn't really a problem. This camera was produced from 1971 to 1976. It seems to have been a more affordable version of the popular QL17, designed to reduce the cost while keeping it easy to use. From what I've read online, it's a simple camera with surprisingly good image quality, so I'm really looking forward to seeing how this lens performs. Actually, I bought this camera before I started my YouTube channel and already took it apart, so the only thing left is the lens itself. Because of that, I'd like to show you the 3D parts one designed to adapt it. This is the lens section after removing it from the camera. The construction is incredibly precise, and it's hard to believe this was made more than 50 years ago. I had a hard time removing the unnecessary shutter blades and modifying it so the aperture could still work properly. But honestly, that kind of process is part of the fun. This is the 3D printed adapter I made to mount the lens on a Sony camera. For this lens, I decided to use the original plastic housing of the lens as part of the mounting structure. It looked like the easiest and simplest way to make it work. I've also included the measurements I used for the design. There may be some differences between individual lenses, but I hope they can be useful as a reference. Actually, I had to redesign it several times. Finding the perfect thickness that allows the lens to focus correctly from close distances all the way to infinity took quite a lot of time. Alright, now let's talk about the shooting conditions. I'll shoot wide open, and if possible, I'll also test the lens at f/8. The camera settings will stay the same for every lens so we can compare them fairly. I made an original test chart for these lens tests. For me, I mainly want to see how well the center and the upper right area are resolved. Alright, let's start by shooting the center wide open. So first, let's take a look at the results shot wide open. It looks like this lens isn't very sharp even in the center of the image. That might be because my copy of the lens has some fungus inside. Anyway, the overall image has a slightly soft look. You could even say it has a gentle, dreamy rendering. Now, let's look at the edges of the image. Compared to the center, the corners are much more blurry. There's also some vignetting. Maybe that was normal for cameras from this era. Compared to modern lenses, well, maybe it's not fair to compare them, but the amount of blur is quite significant. The center, which looked a little soft wide open, has become much sharper. At this point, I think the image quality is actually quite good. And looking at the edges of the frame, they are also much sharper compared to the wide open shot. They still have a slightly soft look, but overall I think the result is very good. This camera was probably designed to be as simple as possible. You just pressed the shutter and took a picture. And since it was usually used outdoors during the daytime, it probably wasn't often shooting wide open. So I imagine it was a very easy camera to use while still producing nice photos. This is the backlight test shot wide open. When the strong light source is in the center of the image, it creates a nostalgic-looking flare effect. Actually, it reminds me of those exaggerated flare effects that are already built into modern photo and video editing software. On the other hand, backlight near the edges of the frame doesn't look very beautiful. Next is the backlight test at f/8. I feel like the flare is a little more controlled compared to the wide open shot. The aperture blades create a diamond-shaped opening, and you can see that shape appearing in the image, which I think is pretty interesting. Alright, enough of the boring test shots. From here, let's switch subjects and take some more casual photos. But to make things useful for everyone watching, I'll continue shooting both wide open and at f/8 for comparison.